All right. Good morning, Tony. How are you? How's everything?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining today's call. House Sigma training sessions happen Mondays at 11. Tony has promised to drop in on these calls every now and then, just to kind of go through his inspection reports that he does offer and the service that he does offer to all you House Sigma agents. Of course, at special price points. Tony, just remind me, are you giving us any discounts on the report overall? I forget your prices, to be honest.
Yeah, so I mean, normally I would charge anywhere, say like 500 for the average house, but through House Sigma, we have a deal where we do 380 plus HST, and that includes everything that you would get in the $500 inspection.
Perfect, fantastic. You did join me the other day when we ran the inspection through 123 Delrax Boulevard over in Georgetown. Pretty cool house. I usually go through these on my own, but I figured I have you on the call, just to kind of take us through some of the details and answer any questions that may come up with the agents that are on the call. And
Sure.
you may have people reach out to you later on as well. And I will drop your contact info in the chat box as well, so you guys can reach out to him. And the agents on the call and watching this, remember guys, Tony's contact info is on the agent toolkit as well. So you can always reach out to him. He's very responsive and gets things done very quickly here. So let's start it off. So Delrex, this was sort of like a bungalow setup from what I recall. You kind of enter the house midway between downstairs and upstairs. So is that considered a bungalow, or is that like a side split? What do you think on that?
Oh, it's still a bungalow.
Still a bungalow, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. So I'm just going through the report summary here.
Mhm.
So a couple of things that we want to note on the brick on the exterior. Like this particular house had gone through a lot of fire damage, and insurance company and whatever came in, and the renovators finished everything nice and neat. But still, there was some items on the exterior we had noticed on the brick that they had filled in with mortar. Why is that important to make sure there's no gaps in the exterior brick and mortar, Tony?
Well, I mean, obviously they did it because it had cracked at some point. Typically, we see cracks like that because there was some sort of moisture damage there. So the reason why we want to repair it is obviously we want to make sure that it doesn't, create a bigger issue, right? And allow for additional moisture to get in there, and then eventually the siding will eventually come off. so so it's better to nip it while it's small, and and overall it's a cheaper repair, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, you have a note here about the surface drainage. So I guess there was a grading issue with this one where water was kind of coming back towards the exterior foundation walls.
Yeah, I think on that one it was the back of the house that had a bit of a slope towards the house. And obviously we just make that note because ideally in a perfect world, we'd like to see the grading slope a 1/4 inch per foot for the first 6 feet away from the house. And that's just going to prevent any water from pooling there. So we don't want any water to come in the basement. I'm sure nobody does, but that's the easy fix. It's just to regrade.
And if you wanted to, let's say, do a next level of the protection for the basement, is there any waterproofing methods that you would recommend for the foundation wall? Anything from the exterior?
I mean, depending on the age of the house, there's a good chance that there's already been some waterproofing done, but on older houses like this one, there was no exterior waterproofing. So you could do like a waterproof membrane, which is like a foundation wrap. You'll see it's got like dimples in it, and that will essentially guard the foundation from chronic dampness and any sort of water that is pooling next to the foundation.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So it just avoids from water being absorbed into the concrete because it's porous, right? And it getting
Yeah.
released into the actual basement as moisture or actual water that will come through, right?
Right.
Hairline cracks, they're fairly normal in Canadian conditions.
Yep.
But if they get too thick, I think there's I think a process called parging. Is that right? That you can use to kind of reseal some of the hairline cracks?
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, if it's just a small hairline crack, we've seen it where even small hairline cracks will allow for moisture intrusion. You're better just to seal them up, because it gets to a certain point where you're gonna have to start considering doing an epoxy ejection, which can be quite expensive. So,
Definitely, definitely. And the epoxy injection, can that be done at any site in the foundation, both on the interior, exterior, or is it just from the inside that they do? Because I've always seen it from the inside.
yeah, it's predominantly done on the inside. So, but they can get quite expensive, like anywhere from like 500 to 3,000. I've seen. It really depends on the warranty and the how long it's been there, how much water is it currently allowing in, and so forth. So
That's definitely right. Yeah. So this is the example of the hairline crack we're talking about, guys. So if you do parging on this, and you can see at the bottom here, it's all been deteriorated. If you do new parging, this will help seal it, and that definitely has to be done every 5+ years because weather conditions, it really deteriorates it fairly quickly. Now, a couple of quick questions about the injection with that. You said is it silicone that they injected with? What is that product that they use?
no, it's epoxy, which is the product.
Okay, it's an epoxy. And what
Yeah,
is
it's
that
basically, it's
epoxy?
like a glue, right? It's like it's designed for specifically concrete, and it binds it together, and it's not supposed to fail, but I've seen a number of cases where it does fail, and that's where it's imperative that we have that warranty so that we can go back on the guy who did it and they can redo it.
That makes sense. And just a typical cost, like when you see like 3 or 4 injection points in one of the cracks, what is that roughly costing a homeowner?
Sorry, what did you say?
Like just with that epoxy injections, what is that roughly costing a homeowner to get that done?
Yeah, so like I was saying, like it could be anywhere from say $500 up to, I've seen up to $3,000. It really, like in terms of warranty, you can get one with no warranty. You can get a 5-year, 10-year, 15 lifetime, right? So the more of a warranty coverage that we have on it, it's typically more expensive.
Gotcha, understood. Now we got a picture of the sump pump up here as well. For a lot of people on the call that may not know what a sump pump is, take us through what is this exactly going to be doing for the foundation here?
So any water that collects near the foundation is going to be sucked out and hopefully exhausted away from the house. A lot of the times we'll see it discharging right next to the foundation, which really doesn't do us any favors, simply because what happens in that case is we end up short cycling the sump pump. So we have water that collects near the foundation. If we're taking that water and dumping it right next to the foundation, it's just going to cycle back into the sump pump and it's going to continuously run. But the idea of the sump pump is to get the water out that's collected around that foundation. So what I would suggest, if you ever see that, and any of you see that, just let your client know that they should have an extension, ideally 6 to 8 feet away from the house, and that's going to prevent that water from pooling there.
Fantastic, fantastic. And can you add a sump pump to like any foundation, any property, or is it have to be like roughed in when the house was being built?
No. So again, with sump pumps, if you do see one in a house, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But if we see it in an older property, there's a good chance that there's a sump pump there because there was an issue in the past. People aren't putting them in just for fun. So it's great that we have it there. It's one of the only lines of defense that we have against moisture intrusion in the basement. And it's a lot cheaper than, say, wrapping the foundation in foundation wrap, doing the digging and all that kind of stuff, right? So a lot of people opt into the sump pump versus doing a complete waterproofing of the basement.
Gotcha, gotcha. But if you did them both, it's like an extra layer of defense. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's just, in my opinion, it adds a lot of value. A lot of people don't see that, but um, I think it's something that's pretty much every house should have. These things tend to happen when you're on vacation and you come back to a flooded basement.
Yeah.
If we would have had a sump pump, there's a really good chance that we wouldn't have to worry about that kind of thing. It's just, I don't know. I think it should be code, to be honest.
I agree with you, and I always tell the buyers or any homeowners, the foundation is the most important part of the house, right? You're gonna make all that investment onto that lower level, the basement, something you do basement apartments, kitchens, bathroom, and everything. And if it goes and floods, you're really out quite a bit. Even if the insurance does come in and cover it, it takes forever to get the work done again. And it's just a big headache and a big distraction. So get this work done as soon as possible. I think it's one of the best investments you can do into the property is getting that waterproofing done and out of the way. And it's going to be fairly bulletproof moving forward.
Yeah.
Now, with the chimney here, I remember you were on the roof on this one and you had literally pulled out one of the bricks. Held it in your hand. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was the picture right here. So you pulled out one of the bricks. So why is it important that the masonry work is an attack on a chimney?
Well, I mean, we want to prevent any moisture intrusion from getting in there. That's the primary reason. Secondly, I mean, the more it chips off, the greater chance that we have of that chimney falling onto somebody in a storm or, that kind of thing. But
Definitely. And you made a good point when you were actually talking about it up and explaining it to us. You said even if there was like a leak in the actual brick and motor here, the gases that are coming through the chimney aren't going to actually leak out because there's another container inside there. Is that right? You were
in
mentioning?
this case, there is, because if you look, do we have another shot of this? Yeah, you see this one with the circle on it to the left. If you notice the top of the chimney, it's crowned off with a B vent. So that B vent is inside of that flue that you see at the top there. So there's no water that can get into that pipe. And that's not going to affect in this case, it's the hot water tank.
Gotcha.
Now, if we were if it was like a fireplace, for example, that'd be a different story. It could eat at they have clay chimney liners inside. And once the moisture gets into there and cracks the chimney liner, that's a very expensive repair. Chimney liners can be anywhere from, say, $10,000 to $20,000 to repair.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And you had mentioned the actual nails that they had put down on these vents on the roof. What was missing on them? There was some sort of fasteners, I guess, missing.
So the fasteners are there. You can see the nail heads there. And
okay, I see. There was some sort of epoxy, I guess, you add on top. What is it that you do to protect that?
So there's a roof sealant that you can put on top of these that prevent the nails from corroding out. And that's so basically for code purposes, everything needs to be sealed. Any penetration on a roof requires sealant.
Gotcha, makes sense. And there was another picture I actually passed by earlier that was quite interesting. Hold on, where was it? 1 second here. I think it was a gas line. So this was the gas line going into the house that had a major hole in it as well. So you recommend epoxying this up or silicone, or how do you fill in this size of gap here?
So the easiest way to do it would be to spray foam around, and then you would do the silicone, or you can get a flexible sealant that they make specifically for brick.
Gotcha, makes sense. Yeah, so this is avoid pretty much rodents, insects, water, from getting in there, right? So
Well, you remember that one went directly up into the attic. So, I mean, that was just an easy way for mice to get into the attic.
that's right. That's exactly right. So you can see more of the fasteners need to be sealed here. Okay, fair enough. Let's see what else we got here. So I remember there was an issue with the garage door sensors as well. They weren't lining up.
Right.
I remember there was a situation on that front.
I mean, that was just a simple fix. We just needed to, I believe the right side photoelectric sensor was just not properly secured. So in order for that to work, we had to have your client hold it in place while we could
That's right.
get that to open and close properly. But yeah, I mean, that's just a matter of taking the stand that it was connected to and just tightening the bolt on it.
Yeah, it was a fairly easy one for sure.
Yeah.
But this next one was a little bit of a bigger issue where the window had condensation in between the panes of glass. So how does something like that end up happening?
There's a number of reasons. One of them is just age of the window, right? I mean, the typical service life on the window is about 20, 25 years. So once we get to that point, there's a good chance that the seals, over time from all the UV that it incurs, it gets brittle and it eventually opens up, right? So there's that. There's also, if we have excessive humidity inside the house, it gravitates towards the windows, hot meets cold, it condenses, we get moisture at the window, and that will eventually eat at that seal as well. I've seen a number of cases where people, I would say 90% of people really have fallen in love with the California shutters.
Yeah.
And, we tend to keep those closed because we don't want anybody looking in.
That's right.
And we forget that when we close them, we end up trapping the warm, moist air in the wintertime next to that window. And of course, it's cold outside in the winter. So again, we're taking warm, moist air, trapping it inside, and it's condensating right in between the California shutter and the window. And that's going to accelerate the deterioration of that seal.
That's a good point. I never thought of that. That actually makes perfect sense. Yeah, a lot of California shutter is very popular. And they're super thick too. So when you close it,
Yeah.
it creates like a heater in there. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And you mentioned typical kind of fixing the gasket, filling it with argon gas. It was about $500 per window.
Yeah, I mean, basically it's 50% of whatever the cost of a new window is. So, depending on the window and the size, it's usually about half price.
Wow.
So as long as your client is okay with the window style itself, there's really not it's not really necessary to get a new window. But I mean, you're not going to want to throw energy out the window either. So yeah, I mean, you would replace the seal and save your money.
Oh, definitely makes sense. And this note here that you guys are looking at, this is from inside the garage. There was an opening right into the attic to the main house, which is a big no-no. Again, items can get in, you lose a lot of cooling and heating that may end up going in there as well. And the drywall here wasn't mudded. So best thing to do, you had mentioned, just put like a grate over it or actually seal it off completely. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I would seal it off. We don't want any pests getting in there, and we definitely don't want any, potential gases from vehicles running, such as a car, that produces carbon monoxide gases getting inside the house.
Yeah, that made sense. That's for sure. And this was that sensor we were talking about that wasn't lined up in the garage.
Right.
All right, let's keep the ball rolling. So this particular house had a main panel and a couple of sub panels. I think there was an in-ground pool. There were some appliances on the basement level, and then the main kitchen upstairs. Everything looked fairly good to you on this one. Like copper wiring is visible here. Anything that you want to note on this?
No, everything looked okay. Yeah, the panels were okay.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a
Pic-
picture of Ash.
Your boy here, Ash. I was making a point of something here. Carbon monoxide detectors, make sure they're in each room in the basement level, very important.
Now, of course, that is modern standard and it's just a recommendation for this house. But if we were to enter a home that was 2015 or newer, every bedroom requires a smoke detector / carbon monoxide detector.
Perfect. Yeah, keeping the ball rolling. This is your water softener. This particular one wasn't working very well on that day of. I think the salt was a little bit too low is what it was saying, and it was unplugged, so we couldn't fully check it. But with the hot water tank, you were mentioning there was a piece missing out here that can potentially kind of return carbon monoxide gas back into the house. What was the name of that piece? Forget what it was.
So the thing that we're looking for is typically found on newer tanks. I can't, do you remember the age on this tank?
It was an older one, 2014. 2014. I remember.
Yeah, okay. So in 2020, we required power vents to be installed. A power vent is that black piece that you'll see on the top. Yep, right there. And it basically prevents any backdrafting, right? So it's going to force any carbon monoxide out of that B vent, what you see there, that metal pipe going outside, and prevent any carbon monoxide gases from slipping through in that gap that you see there into the house.
Yeah, that's an important one. You mentioned there was also another piece missing for like if the water gets really hot, doesn't burn you.
Yeah, so I mean, it's primarily for child safety, but it's an anti-scald device that would go and connect that hot and cold line. And the idea behind that is to essentially mix a little bit of cold water into the hot line. And that's going to ensure that, let's just say that, Ash, you're such a good husband, you're doing the dishes and, your son comes in from behind you and turns on the hot water.
Right.
Well, that's going to shoot a bit of cold water into that tap to prevent your child from getting scalded on the hand.
Gotcha. Makes perfect sense. And yeah, typical life expectancy on these ones, 8 to 12 years. Replacement cost can be around $2 to $3 grand for these hot water tanks. So this was the main drain. It was in an awkward situation. That's why we had taken a little picture of it. Let's see what else we got here. So furnace was pretty good condition. I think it was 2020. It was forced air gas furnace. So there wasn't anything to really comment on these ones. Typical life expectancy is what, about 12 years as well? 12 to 15?
On a furnace, it's 18 to 25.
Oh, 18 to 25. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah,
And
hot water would be 8 to 12.
And there was another little like heater in the garage. What are like the life expectancies of these kind of devices?
They could actually last a lot longer because they don't really get a lot of usage most of the time. But I've seen them last like 20, 25 years.
Oh, perfect. This was, yeah, to heat up the garage. And we also made a note here that this is right at the front of the house. This is your main gas line. You want to put a little pillar or post, metal post to prevent any sort of accidents, a vehicle kind of ramming into the house.
Yeah, especially in the winter when you're sliding into your driveway.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point for sure. We actually managed to get you in the attic on that day. I know we had things over.
Yeah,
we got you in there. An R60 rating, which you were very happy with. Is that the standard R60 in the industry?
Definitely not the standard. It is now the new standard. It's rare to find in any house older than 2020. So the fact that we saw it in this house, which was what, I believe 1950s, it's pretty rare to find. So yeah, I was definitely happy with the level insulation here. The only thing I wasn't happy with was that the insulation around that pipe, which had fallen off, which is, a potential source for mold inside the attic during winter months, as it can create condensation when hot meets cold, because the air that's coming out of that pipe is warm, moist air from the bathroom. Or actually, this is even worse. It was in the kitchen, right? So we're boiling a lot of water, stuff like that. So that's going right into the attic.
That's right.
So easy fix, but definitely a good catch.
Yeah, that was a good one. AC was also at 2020. I know the client was a little bit concerned about the size for the house. What was your take on that? Do you think this size would be sufficient for this bungalow? It was about 1,500 square feet inside. So I figured it would.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a 24,000 BTU, which would equal about 2 tons, 2.5 tons. So that's adequate amount. You don't want to go too big, because then you can end up with just a mess inside for air quality. So that was a good size.
Perfect. No, that definitely makes sense. I know this part repeats a little bit. Let's see what else we got.
This is just the full. You're not going to find any additional items in here. It's just going to. So the reason why it does that is because so you have the summary and you have the full report. You can share the summary with whoever you want, and it won't provide that person with the full report. They'll just get the summary of things. The full report, you get all these pictures, plus you get all the questions at the bottom, which you'll see here. Yeah.
Fantastic. So overall, the house definitely did show well. A lot of the key items were done. There was a lot of little items that annoyed this particular seller, but we managed to kind of power through and get things done. Now, Tony does provide another service for you guys as well. If you are in a situation in a bind where maybe there's not enough time for an inspection to get done, and you need them to kind of join you during the showing and walkthrough. He does offer that from time to time, not always, but if it is possible, he will, of course, charge you for it. But what does that look like? And is that something you still are doing these days, Tony?
So I always offer it. 9 times out of 10, it always turns into a full inspection anyway. At least now, because the market's a bit softer. Whereas, before, when the market's really tight, there's a very, very small chance that we're going to get, an inspection in and be able to negotiate based on a home inspection. So a lot of the times when it's like that, a lot of people just want to know what they're getting. They're not overly concerned. They just want to make sure they're not buying something that's going to fall apart or have any major concerns. So I definitely offer a walkthrough that provides them with enough detail that they can make an educated decision. And if they have to overspend, they're willing to do that at that point.
Makes sense, as long as they're fully aware, right? Setting the right expectations.
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking us through. I'll just leave it real quick to any questions that you guys may have on the call. This is your chance to fire away. If you have any, certain situations you're dealing with now or in the past that you're still curious about, please fire away in the chat box or on mic and drop it in questions. We'll give them a minute. All right. We usually do have a shy group with us, Tony, to be honest, but I'll see if any questions do come up after the call, and I'll fire them your way. And I will drop Tony's contact info in this group message. Just 1 second here. And I will drop his phone number. Do you prefer a phone number or email? How do you prefer the contact?
Yeah, I mean, I typically have my phone near me. So, I mean, you could call or text. That's the fastest way to get to me. But email works too. I just, for some reason, I get the texts a lot faster than an email.
I do have one question coming in. They're asking, how would a larger AC unit affect the air quality? You made that comment. You mind elaborating on that?
So the bigger the air conditioner is, there's a chance that it will short cycle and it won't operate efficiently. You'll get a lot of dampness in the house. When that dampness occurs, it's a source of mold, and you'll end up with poor quality of air.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Makes sense. Yeah, you want always the right size for each item. You don't want to overdo it.
Yeah, if it's too small, then it's going to be working too hard. If it's too big, it's going to come on and off, on and off, on and off, and it's not really going to work properly.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. All right, sounds good. Everything else seems pretty clear on the chat box. Tony, always a pleasure having you on the call. We'll have you back on another one, maybe a couple months from now, and we'll keep the ball rolling.
Right on. Appreciate you having me. And if you need anything else, just let me know.
Definitely will do. Enjoy your day, guys, and we'll talk soon. Take care.
All right, take care.